This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
I am grateful to finally have the opportunity to correct the mistakes, omissions, and falsehoods that have been voiced at and by this committee and in the newspapers over the past number of weeks.
To the witness, the name of your company is GC Strategies, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
How many staff work at GC Strategies?
We have 2 employees, but we outsource our finance and legal.
App programming or design?
No, we do not.
So your role in terms of IT contracts for the federal government is that you're the middleman between the government and the people who do the work. Is that correct?
Well, we're responsible for bringing in individuals and building teams that the federal government would not have access to, as they do not have them on staff, and they also do not have recruitment capabilities.
Right. I mean, the recruitment capabilities of direct messaging people on LinkedIn, I'm sure a value could be ascribed to that. And actually, we're going to see what that value is. You worked on the $54 million Arrivecan app. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And that app, the work on that app is now under RCMP investigation. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
You're not aware of the RCMP investigating any of the work related to GC Strategies or anyone that you've done, you were contracted by or subcontracted to?
That's correct. My understanding was in the testimonies that I've heard and was clarified by some honorable members that right now RCMP is only investigating the Botler accusations and not Arrivecan. Okay,
so did you work with Botler?
I've worked with Botler for 2 years as their representation, and we were in partnership.
Okay, and how much money have you made so far with contracts with the government of Canada?
I'm sorry, I do not have those numbers in front of me. I wasn't prepared for that question. My apologies.
You weren't prepared to tell the committee when we're here to ask you about your contracts with the government, how much you've been paid by the government for your contracts?
Well, this is the Arrivecan application study. This isn't contracting with GC Strategies and the federal government study. I've already given off all the information I have for the application for Arrivecan, which is the base of this study. I've had 2 hours of testimony. I've given hundreds of pages of documentation.
Right.
And we're awaiting
you had to be summoned to appear here today, sir, and you don't even have the basic details about the work that you've done for the government. How much money was GC Strategies paid to not do any programming or app design for the Arrivecan app?
Well, first, I think I clarified in my opening statement the reason why I was summoned was because 1 hour was not sufficient.
I heard your opening
today,
statement, sir. My question is with respect to your billing for Arrivecan.
Mm-hmm. Can you repeat the question, please?
How much did you get paid for your work on Arrivecan?
I've already given up all this information. You have all of my invoices.
Sir, are you refusing to answer the question? It's a very straightforward question. As you said, this is a study about Arrivecan. It seems to me that it would be quite pertinent for you to be able to tell the committee how many millions of dollars you were paid with your 2-person company to do work on an app that you didn't do any programming for. How much money?
I am more than happy that once I get that number to give you the answer in writing. I do not have that number with me right now, the exact dollars and cents. Apologies.
So if I said the number was $9 million, you wouldn't be able to dispute that?
No, I can dispute that.
Okay, so what number?
I can tell you it wasn't 9. It's been publicized in the media. It's somewhere between 15 and 30%. That's the number that everybody's going with.
Okay, so it's quite interesting that you're not interested in sharing the number because of the amount of work that was not done by you on the app and the amount of money that you collected for work that was done on the app. Are you familiar with the testimony that was given that you gave at this committee? You talked about your previous appearance where you talked about relationships. So I'm going to ask you, do you use relationships to get work from the government of Canada?
My relationships are gained from meetings that I've had since 2009 with multiple clients. We go through a competitive process to win business, like every other one of the 600 or 700 vendors that go do the same thing.
So, is your client list relationship based?
My client list is people that I continue to have meetings with from when I first picked up the phone for a cold call and still have to this today.
So we've heard testimony at this committee that that you leveraged relationships with key people in the government in order to guarantee business, and that's how you solicited the participation of subcontractors. Is that a fair characterization?
That's accurately what your testimony is. You've heard, but that's not what happened. You're making reference to a testimony and taking that as gospel.
So you're saying that the witnesses lied to the committee?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the reason the business came about was, as again, having meetings with continuously having meetings and identifying opportunities, and actually being ahead of it, getting partnerships with people, understanding where the market is going, and being able to use procurement processes to get them in, while staying within PSVC guidelines.
Sir, you've said in relationship to in reference to your relationship with Mr. McDonald that you've been with him his whole career in government. Is that correct?
That was an embellishment.
An embellishment by you? Correct.
So while we sell to the federal government, I also have to sell to my clients.
So by selling, you lied to them.
No, that's not necessarily the truth.
That is our time.
Thank you, Jared. Mr. Firth, there's a few things I want to remind you about before I ask you some questions. With respect to parliamentary privilege, which every member enjoys in this committee, it's a contempt of Parliament, sir, to mislead this committee by giving a false statement or false evidence, to refuse, unless related to cabinet confidence, to answer any questions, or to fail to produce documents that this committee might require someone to produce. So although you are not sworn on a holy book, this parliamentary privilege binds your conscience and binds your responses to always provide us with the truth. Do you understand that, sir? Mr. Firth, do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
And Mr. Firth, in light of all of the criminal allegations that have been levied against you and Dalian and Coridex over the last several weeks, specifically the following offenses have been in the spotlight: the offense of theft over $5,000, forgery, fraud over $5,000, impersonation, all of which, if prosecuted by indictment by a prosecutor in this country, could result upon conviction of someone serving a sentence greater than 2 years. You aware of that, sir?
Yes, I am.
And under this cloud of serious and significant criminal suspicion, have you retained legal counsel?
Yes, I have.
And has legal counsel, without me asking what legal counsel has informed you, has legal counsel impressed upon you the importance of telling the truth?
Yes, they have.
Has legal counsel instructed you not to answer certain questions?
No, they have not.
Thank you. One area that you have been presented with, sir, that gives me great discomfort as a parliamentarian is the issue regarding resumes. And quite frankly, sir, whether you call it a mistake, whether you call it a lack of intent, whether you refer to it as an embellishment, in my respectful submission, sir, that is a lie. And no one believes you. No one believes you in this room. We have national reporters in this room, and I doubt very much that they believe you, because your story is so fantastic, it's simply worthy of unbelief. You, sir, at all material times only received one version of the CV from both Ritika Dutt and Mr. Amir Moravej. One CV, one resume that was not ambiguous, that was not confusing, and you took it upon yourself to manipulate both of those resumes to ensure that Botler qualified for government funding. You did that without the express permission or consent of both Botler's executives, and in so doing, sir, you have committed a serious criminal offense. Do you have anything to say about that, or are you going to continue on this line that I made a mistake?
Yeah. I'm going to tell the truth, and it was a genuine mistake because there are multiple versions of the resume. They may have given me one, but as a recruiter, you make different versions of resumes, and the wrong one was sent through.
Sir, who made multiple versions? You or somebody else?
I did. I started my career as a recruiter, so I'm
On earth, sir, why on earth would compel you to modify one version of the resume received by both individuals? Why did you have to modify it and create different versions without their consent or permission? Why?
Because accompanying every resume going to the federal government is a matrix, an evaluation matrix. That is a score that you get to be compliant, to be a certain category on the contract.
Lied to ensure that they qualified. You embellished.
I'm afraid
you
that
manipulated the facts.
Mr. Journalist for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Firth, you are without a doubt the least believable witness I have ever heard appear before a parliamentary committee. You referred earlier to something you had said about your relationship with Mr. McDonald. You said it was an embellishment. Would you say you're someone who often engages in embellishment?
No.
No, so your claims about Mr. McDonald were a rare instance of your embellishments. Is that your testimony today?
Yes.
Okay. I want to drill down on the resume issue. I know this is sort of stuck in the craw of many members. You sent 2 false resumes that we know of, and you've admitted to as much. You said it was an accident. We have no way of knowing how many false resumes you sent. What we know is that we have 2 whistleblowers, and we have 2 instances of false resumes. So that's a pretty abysmal record when it comes to submitting accurate resumes. Could I ask you, would you be willing to table for the committee all of the different versions of the resumes for Ms. Dutt and Mr. Marevich that you have?
Yes.
Okay. Would you be able to table them within 24 hours?
48 hours?
I think the committee would agree to 48 hours. This alleged sort of accident with the resume, I want to understand just like really the anatomy of how these alleged accidents happen. So how does this process unfold of you sort of creating multiple resumes, the true ones and the false ones, and trying to remember to submit the true one as opposed to the false ones that you have created for some unknown person? Just walk me through how that mistake got made, allegedly.
Yep. So there's 2 versions. You have the one that was sent in by the resource. You then have the one which is compliant against the matrix, which is also the evaluation grid. They're the 2 versions you have. So you have the one, and then there'll be one in between, which is where you've gone back and forth and you've authenticated that the technology is correct. If there was technology that was missing, because again, not one resume ever matches completely with a government matrix. There's always conversations back and forth between a resource and a recruiter or sales to try and identify things they may not have put. Like we have resumes with 190 pages worth of experience that we deal with some of our consultants. We have others. Which
okay, let me jump in because there's some things you're saying that make sense, but there's some things that don't. So I would understand if you got a resume that was too long, that contained errors, or that didn't contain important information. You said, hey, we need to get more background on your educational experience. You missed identifying specific skills. So if that's what you mean by fit the matrix,
okay, that's maybe a conversation you had with them. What seems to have happened here, though, is that you in order to make it compliant with the specifications of what they were asking for, you changed some numbers, right? So asking someone to provide further information is one thing. Massively inflating a number associated with a particular field, taking someone that says they have a bachelor's degree and editing that to say PhD. That's not just making it sort of systemically compliant. That's making substantive data changes. So how did it happen that you made substantive changes to the data on a resume, and in this case, didn't consult with the resource in either case? How did that happen?
So again, the second version is making it compliant. You can, after back and forth, you can identify that they would never be compliant, that they don't have that time. At that point, you then go back to the sub and say, what other categories do you have which are level 2 that would have 7 years or 5 years?
Okay. So you enter the false information that would make it compliant, and then you send it back to the resource to say, is this true? Is that your process?
It's a conversation. You phone them up and you say, you go back and forth, because phoning is going to be quicker than going back and forth.
Right. Okay, but your first step is entering false information that would be compliant with the contract, or at least different information, and then you go back to them and say, can I submit this revised version? Is that your process?
You don't. Well, no. You need back and forth, because the revised process.
Right. Okay. You go back and forth and say, okay, we changed the numbers. Is that okay? And if they say it's okay, you send it. And if they say it's not okay, then you sort of negotiate. But your initial step is to change the number they put in. Is that correct?
Is to make them compliant, and then you start a conversation.
And you make them compliant by changing the number in terms of the amount of experience or the amount of time. Is that correct?
It's also an exercise for me.
No, it's not also nothing. I want you to answer the question.
To end it right there.
Sir, have you been contacted by the RCMP concerning allegations that name your company specifically in the Globe and Mail on October 4th? Because the RCMP is investigating. Have you been contacted?
No, I have not.
You won't tell the committee what you were paid on Arrivecan for your two-person company that did no IT work on an IT project, but you said your commission was up to 30% of $54 million. So you won't tell us how much, but that would be up to $16 million. Is that what you're saying? That it could be up to $16 million for a company that does no IT work to do IT work?
We were never paid $54 million. Our piece was the front-end web development and our mobile development.
30%. You said the number was 30%, and so you won't tell us how much. So it's up to $16 million.
No, it's not. $54 million included $10 million for a call center. It included other vendors they used. $54 million was not through GC Strategies contracts. That was only.
You won't tell us how many. You won't tell us how many millions. You're summoned before a parliamentary committee. You won't tell us how many millions you were paid on this. But we do know that you submitted fraudulent resumes that increased the billing and the billing rates and falsely qualified vendors. We know that you lied about your relationship with Cameron McDonald to oversell yourself to subcontractors. That's unbelievable. Have you ever met with government officials outside of government offices, outside of government business hours?
No, I have not.
You have not. Have you ever met Mark Briard, the former CTO for Canada?
Yes,
have you ever met him in a hotel?
I don't have that information. I can look on my Outlook. I don't think so.
You don't know if you met him in a hotel. Do you know if Cameron McDonald has a cottage?
I don't know if Cameron McDonald has a cottage.
Do you know if he had one?
I do not know if he had a cottage.
How many projects have you worked on with him?
So when we first met in 2009, the first contract I had was in 2020, 11 years after we first had our first call.
Can you table all the documentation that you have for projects that you've done with Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
When were you approached by Mr. McDonald about Botler?
This was a conversation not about Botler, but again, identifying a systemic problem in the federal government with harassment.
What was the price for the CBSA Botler pilot?
I believe you'll have to ask Corelix and Dalian. I don't have the final price. I was not dealing with the government directly.
So you can't tell us about the target price for the enterprise implementation of the Botler solution for the government of Canada that you were working on?
No, because I do not know exactly how many people are in the public servants. I don't have that number.
Your commission would have been on the government of Canada-wide implementation of that project?
No, because the deal was never done. I don't know how that number.
You entered into this without knowing what you'd get paid for it. It was just goodwill by the guy who committed fraud to increase billing rates on resumes for some subcontractors. It was just you doing a nice thing for Botler and the government of Canada.
As I mentioned, it was not fraud; it was a mistake, and increasing that did nothing to the rates. The rates are fixed price. This is not per diem based.
Sir, you said that previously that that you are paid primarily on per diem. We know that the per diem rates are set based on the experience of the subcontractor. So how could it not affect the price by changing the experience of the person who is doing the work if it increases the per diem rate?
It's a fixed price. It doesn't matter if the per diem was $20 or if it was $900. The fixed price for the deliverable would be $54 or whatever the number was. It doesn't go off a time material. It goes off fixed price and deliverables.
The changing the resume, fraudulently changing the resume to qualify someone and inflating the number of hours that they have is absolutely going to affect the price of the contract and whether or not the person's going to be able to do the contract.
Well, as I mentioned, there's different categories. There would have been categories if after it was deemed they were not compliant with those, they would have been on a different category they would have been compliant for. And per diems don't matter on a fixed price contract.
Is your testimony that you did speak with the person named in those resumes? You spoke with them by telephone about the changes that you made, the fraud that you committed on those resumes. You spoke to them. You did a back and forth on the telephone with them about this resume. Is that your testimony today?
No, as I mentioned to the previous gentleman I was speaking with, I didn't do that because of haste. The wrong one was sent in and they were never qualified by the resources. That conversation never happened.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Firth, I'm sure that the millions of Canadians who either are watching this or will learn about this in the press or seek out the transcript of this particular meeting will be very, very grateful that the RCMP has access to this particular evidence. What I can understand is why you would take active steps in misleading this particular committee and Canadians with respect to your role as it relates to fraud and forgery with respect to modifying without permission and consent these transcripts, but the resumes to the government. What I can't understand is why you would deliberately lie to this committee on a very innocent question that was put to you by my colleague, Mr. Barrett, when he asked you if you knew whether or not Mr. Cameron McDonald from the CBSA had a cottage. And you said no. Do you want to reflect on that answer?
Yeah, Mr. McDonald has never referred to it as a cottage. It's a chalet. It's not a cottage.
For that clarification, Mr. Firth.
French is so useful.
Are you kidding me?
That is the honest.
Are you saying you knew all along that he had something that was equivalent to a cottage or a cabin, but because a different word was used to refer to it, that you had the license to say, I don't know?
You were asking.
Is that what you want us to believe?
You were asking a specific question about a cottage. I answered honestly. He has never mentioned that he had a cottage.
This guy hasn't said anything honest since he's been here.
But he's got a cabin, doesn't he?
A chalet.
A chalet. Well, why didn't you offer that?
Because that was not the question that was asked.
I see.
Oh.
I see. So you have a very limited ability in terms of telling this committee the truth. Is that correct, Mr. Firth?
No, I'm answering
because the RCMP
correctly.
is going to have a field day when they come to interview you.
That's right.
I answered the question honestly with the question that was posed in front of me.
I see. Well, let's ask you some more questions then. Have you ever had or claimed to have influence on any government officials?
No, I have not.
Do you remember, sir, some of the allegations that you have probably read about by Botler, that they've actually taped conversations with you? Hours and hours of conversations with you? Do you want to reflect on that question again?
No, I've seen everything that you've said. Everything that was in the newspaper is what I've read.
Well, sir, I'll remind you what you said on audio tape that has been recorded. You told Botler during the very first call on November the 8th, 2019, these are your words, quote, "So we have essentially the ear of the president right now of CBSA, which is, I guess, really the equivalent of the minister or like the deputy minister, and my client who is leading, he's a very high executive responsible for innovation, cloud," end of quote. Another quote, "For the next step of getting the proposal over to the president because this will land on his desk 100% like this is going, above the ADM level." If that's not influence or claiming to have influence on any government official, sir, I don't know what is. So I'm going to ask you again, do you want to be truthful or not to this committee? Or do you want to continue to lie that you did not exaggerate or claim that you had this great influence over officials at the CBSA? Yes or no?
I was working with one person who identified...
Answer the question. Let's start with that. Answer the question. Yes or no? Do you agree that this is your words that you uttered to Botler on November 8th, 2019, bragging about your influence on government officials? Do you accept that or not? Yes or no?
Yes.
Just briefly back to the resumes. I think I understand your process. You said that you receive the resumes, you make them compliant before sending them, but then check in with resources to make sure your edits are okay. Is that how you describe the process?
Correct.
Okay. So if I'm a potential subcontractor, I send you a resume. It says I have, say, 4 months of IT experience. The contract requires 4 years of IT experience. So you change the 4 months to 4 years to make it compliant. Then you check in with me and say, hey, is it okay that I made this change before sending it? Is that right?
It's it's more of a case for me as well to identify if they can even pass the grid. So
can you just answer the question? Like you said you check in if you make it compliant, then you check with the resource if that's okay with them. So you change the 4 months to 4 years, you check in with me, you see if it's okay, and then if it's okay with me, you send it on the basis presumably that I've signed off on it.
I check in with you, but if there's too much, like at this point, we're going to identify if it's just not even feasible to be in this category.
Right,
which is why you do the version. But you do the revised
version by changing the numbers to make it compliant. Then you check in with the resource, and then you send it in. Right?
It's also an exercise for myself to see how far a stretch this is.
Sure.
But that's important, though.
Okay, but that exercise involves changing the numbers, right?
It does, but
excellent.
I can do that for
well,
myself.
Not excellent, actually, but thank you for clarifying. So in the case of the folks with Botler, though, you were working so quickly that you missed a step. So you just changed the numbers. Intentionally, you changed the numbers, but you didn't have time to check in with them, and you just sent in the resume without checking in with them. So that doesn't sound to me like a mistake. That just sounds to me like cooking the numbers.
No, to me, it was an honest mistake, and I'm apologizing.
No, I mean, it's a mistake in a moral sense, but I don't think it's a practical mistake. Like, you've described a process in which you change the numbers as a matter of routine.
But
right?
given more time, and not executing in haste, I would have identified that this resource would not have met this grid, and therefore would have gone back to data analytics and asked for a different category.
But it's obviously a problem that you change the numbers and then you go back and ask permission. Like in some case, it's great that Botler did the right thing here and has blown the whistle. But in many cases, if you're routinely changing the numbers, people may shrug and say it's okay based on you telling them it's okay when obviously it's not. I have some additional questions sir, I want to ask you. You had said in response to a previous question, you'd been asked, have you ever met Mark Briard, former CTO of Canada, in a hotel? And you had said at the time, no. Do you have any interest in correcting that answer?
No, I said I don't recollect. I cannot remember every meeting I've had with everybody in the last 12 years. I'm sorry, I can go back into my Outlook and give you the answer in writing.
That's a different answer than you gave. We could check an ATIP that you submitted to find out that actually you did meet with him in a hotel, sir. That is ATIP A2018000247. Ironically, the ATIP came from you. We've gone back and forth about this cottage versus chalet issue. Have you ever been to this infamous cottage or chalet that is owned by Mr. McIntosh?
Never.
Okay. I think there'll be some follow up on that point. So it feels a little bit like we're on the Maury show here. Now, going back to October 20th, your appearance before the committee last year, you had said, we are not in any conversations for budgeting or cost controls. We have quality control. If a resource isn't performing, we will then work with the government to replace that. So you're not involved in conversations on budgeting or cost control. You told the committee that a year ago. Sir, was that true, what you told the committee at that time?
Yes.
It was, okay. The Globe and Mail was able to get access to an email you sent, though, on January 26, 2021. In that email, you talked explicitly about budgeting. You said CBSA, quote, CBSA were pissed at the overall pricing and threatened to pull the contract. You said your cost plus 15% for me and 20% Coridex, et cetera, arose close to $500,000. I was not prepared to slow down the process down and stop our first client from purchasing, so I removed myself from the equation completely and I gave them a 15% discount. Attached is a contract that shows it, et cetera. So you're sending emails that actually provide explicit budgeting information. So given that we've now put that email on the record, would you be prepared to admit that what you told the committee on October 20th regarding budgeting was in fact also a lie?
Sorry, no. This was about Arrivecan. Was a specific question you asked me on Arrivecan, saying, "Are you responsible for contracting or budgeting on Arrivecan?" And the answer is not at all. I was not even responsible for this response here to be anything to do with budget control. I removed myself from the deal, therefore giving the Crown a discount. That's not budget control.
You said you weren't involved in budgeting.
That is our time, gentlemen.
When is the last invoice you submitted on Arrivecan work to the Government of Canada?
I'm sorry, I do not have that. I can provide that for you. I didn't come here with information. I've already provided every kind of information I had. You didn't come here with information
that GC Strategies didn't do for work on Arrivecan, but billed the taxpayers for. Got it. Well, the answer is October 2023. I'm going to read you a transcript of a leaked audio file, and it's a view. Quote, "We did the Arrivecan app, which is one that everybody has to use to come across the border, in 2 months. And that has like 27 pages, 15 workflows, e-declarations, facial recognition, NFC capability of the passport," end quote. If it took you 2 months to do the work, why are you still billing taxpayers in October of this year?
October 23 was not Arrivecan invoicing.
But I'm pleased that you've suddenly found the documents related to my question. The problem that we have here today is that all of my questions, we have to assume that you've lied about absolutely everything. Sir, I've never said to a witness in my parliamentary career that they have lied to a committee, but you just did it. So I'm not sure if you thought you were clever pulling a thesaurus off your shelf. Well, it's not a cottage, it's a chalet. It's embarrassing. What you're doing is disrespectful to members of this committee, and it's disrespectful, frankly, to the Government of Canada, who is paying your rent. And taxpayers should be very concerned that a dollar has flowed from the Government of Canada to your organization, because everything you've said here today is absolutely unacceptable from a contractor for the Government of Canada. I
haven't invoiced the CBSA since May.
That was not a question.
So I don't know.
That was not a question. That was a statement of fact. Mr. Chair, can you please call the witness to order?
Sure time, Mr. Barrett. Please continue.
Sir, I'm going to ask you some questions that we dealt with previously, because we're going to see if we get different answers this time, because that seems to be the pattern with you. Do you use relationships to get work from the Government of Canada?
No, I do not.
You've and
What is your interpretation of a relationship, please?
Well, I mean, I guess what is your interpretation of a cottage versus a chalet? Where we have you meeting, we have records of you meeting at a hotel with the CIO for the government of Canada, and then you tell this committee that, oh, I don't have any recollection of that. I've got to tell you, if I meet with the top person from an organization, I'm going to remember that meeting, particularly if I've had to comply with access to information records requests concerning that, and then furnished that request. Sir, you're being dishonest and disingenuous in all of your answers to our questions. I appreciate that you're embarrassed about the work that you've done and about the things that you've said, but you are required to be honest when you come before a parliamentary committee. And this clever act that you're trying to put on is not fooling anyone. So I'm going to ask you some of these questions again. Have you ever met with government officials or anyone employed by government in a private residence? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. What is the nature of that meeting?
I'm assuming, I don't know the exact meaning you're referencing. It's not like I've had hundreds of these things. The truth is, I don't know which one you're talking about.
I want to know about all. I want to know about all of them.
I don't know which one you're. Sorry, I cannot comment. If you could direct your exact question to me in writing, I'm more than happy to respond.
Sir, you're here providing oral answers to oral questions for a standing committee of the House of Commons. I don't have the answer. Well, your answer changes. I do not have the answer. So your answer changes. I've got about a minute left in time, and I'm interested. I'm interested in what precision we can get on any of that. You've had so many meetings with government officials in their private residences outside of working hours that you can't even remember. You can't remember how much money you were paid to work on the Arrivecan app. You can't remember meetings that you had in hotels with the chief officials for information technology for the government of Canada. I'm not sure what confidence your clients could have in you if you can't remember these very basic details. Sir, I'm going to ask that you table for this parliamentary committee all bank records related to your business and the government of Canada, that GC Strategies, government of Canada, and Botler. Anywhere that nexus exists, this committee, I would like you to table the bank records. Are you willing to do that? Yes or no, sir?
Yes, so it's between the government to myself to Botler. Is that what you're asking?
Everything concerning everything.
I'm asking clarification on your question. Please.
Everything concerning GC Strategies, the government of Canada, Coridex, Dalian, Botler. So anywhere there's an intersection of any of those companies, the committee would like your bank records. You will furnish us with them within 48 hours?
No, I'm not prepared to do that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
For what purpose?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
it's a private information.
Mr. Chair, I move that the committee order the production of those documents.
Certainly. Do we have committee approval? I will interject. I assume, like other sensitive documents, we will keep them within the committee.
Correct. Yeah. We're not.
Yeah. Until or unless the committee decides otherwise. Yes, sir.
That
Chair, can we just suspend for 30 seconds?
So we're just going to suspend for a moment. Go ahead.
My understanding is that the committee send for all bank records related to the business of GC Strategies, where there is an intersection between GC Strategies, the Government of Canada, Coridex, Dalian, and Botler, and that the documents be provided to the clerk of the committee by Monday, November 6th, 2023 at noon.
Is that clear, Mr. Firth?
Yep, I heard that.
That is an order of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. We will now finish up.
And just in general, have you learned anything from this experience? Was there anything you would do differently to not kind of end up before us here today?
Yeah, I would probably at this point only work with directly with the federal government.